Welcome back to Cedar Creek Bible Church. Hope you had a pleasant afternoon on this day that the Lord made for us. I'm going to begin this evening by singing number 10 in our hymnals, "O Worship the King." Words are on the screen behind me if you prefer that. I invite you all to join me if you can in standing as we sing this together. "O Worship the King." Let's bow for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are our Maker, you are our Redeemer, you're our friend, because we are frail children. We need you every hour, Lord Jesus. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to come together again to sing praises to you for all that you have done for us. Help us to realize that. Help us to acknowledge all that you have done for us and to just lean upon you. Thank you, Father, for each one that's here tonight as we have a short business meeting. We pray that your guidance would be in control of everything that we say and do in that. Father, as we continue to sing, that our voices would resonate again, all that you have done and all that you are to us, that you would draw us unto yourself in that and through your word. And then as we gather around the table, Father, just to give you praise again for all that you've accomplished on the cross, that we might live, that we might be free. Thank you for your goodness to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated except for Brian, who's coming for our congregational meeting.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to bring to order the first quarter congregational meeting for the Cedar Creek Bible Church. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Zach to read the minutes from the last congregational meeting, which I had in my brain that it was the fourth quarter one. Is that correct? Okay.
I know between your brain and mine, we might be in trouble. This could be interesting. All right. Let's hope I got the right minutes here. Good evening. All right, the fourth quarter congregational meeting of 2020 was held on January 24th, 2021. Chairman Brian Van Amen called the meeting to order. Secretary Zach Norton read the minutes from the December 13th, 2020 congregational meeting. The minutes were approved as read upon motion by Mike Stout and supported by Donna Hashley. The fourth quarter 2020 financial report was accepted as given upon motion by Darrell Bolter and supported by Jim Castengay. The following proposals from the board were brought before the congregation for a vote. Number 1, to approve the 2021 missions budget in the amount of $62,775. A motion in favor of the proposal was made by Gerald Winton and supported by Leo Hendershot. The motion passed. Number 2, to approve the proposed child protection policy addition to the Constitution. A motion in favor of the proposed policy was made by Jim Castengay and supported by Mike Stout. The motion passed. Brian opened the floor for discussion on proposed changes to Article 4 of the Constitution. There was no discussion. Having no further business, a motion was made by John Cowger and supported by Ken Hicks to adjourn the meeting. The motion passed and the meeting was adjourned.
Thank you, Zach. Just a few things we're going to do tonight. We're going to, yes, I will. Do you want me to do it now? Okay. No, I didn't forget. I have to make a list because my brain is kind of fried. Okay, I need a motion to accept the minutes from the fourth quarter congregational meeting. Mike Stout, Tyler Guernsey second. Both of those people I could recognize. Do we have any discussion? Any questions about the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes from the fourth quarter congregational meeting say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. So now, as I was saying, we only have a few things to talk about. We have the Article 4 of the Constitution to vote on, the first quarter financial report. We need to discuss and take questions for the policy changes. And that's about it. So let's get started. Everybody has the first quarter financial report. It came in the bulletin this morning. I see Nick in the back, so if there's any questions, when we get to that point, he'll be able to answer them, I'm sure. I need a motion to accept the first quarter 2021 financial report as presented by our treasurer, Enoch Castengay. Do I have a second? Glenna Pashby. Any discussion or questions for Nick? Okay. If there's no questions or any discussion, all those in favor of accepting the first quarter 2021 financial report as submitted, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that was easy enough. Last congregational meeting, we discussed Article 4 of the Constitution. So tonight we're going to be voting on it. You should have all gotten a ballot. Does anyone else? Pastor needs a ballot, Gerald. Okay, everybody has a ballot? Okay, I need a motion to approve the Article 4 of the Constitution and Policy Handbook. Al Graves. I need a second. Mrs. Storm. Marilyn, it took me a second, I'm sorry. I could tell you a story, but it would be, I was sitting there, I was trying to try to think everybody's name before I go up here. It's kind of scary. Is there any discussion, any questions? We have a policy, we have a second one too. We discussed the Article 4 at the last business meeting. We discussed it and took questions for it.
So obviously they look the same, the covers look the same because they're the cover of the Constitution. But the Article 4 half sheet doesn't list the 4 policies, the other one does.
You should have gotten another one that looks like this, that talks about the 4 policies, the ushering policy, the communicable disease policy and guidelines, the wedding policy, and the church use. That's the one we're going to discuss tonight. We're not going to vote on this. We're going to discuss it and take questions on it.
What we're voting on, the cover note says attached you'll find proposed revisions to Article 4.
Right. And you should have gotten, the ballot that you got would be for voting on that. Any other questions? Okay. Mark your ballots. Yes for yes, you're okay with it. No if you don't approve of it. And then deacons will pick it up at some point here. The last thing that we need to discuss as far as business tonight is the church use policy, the ushering policy, the wedding policy, and the communicable disease policy, which you should have gotten and had time to look at. Does anybody have any questions, comments? The only thing I saw in it was that in the casual contact disease spread by casual conduct, they have a list and ringworm is in there twice.
Give me page number.
Page number 37. So if you have double ringworm, you can't come to church.
Yeah, we fixed that, but apparently didn't fix it. Thanks. That's just a clerical error.
Yes, Ken?
Under the ushering policy, as I was reading through that, I was thinking, we have several of the areas that this is touching on is really touched now by our security policy. We talk about the responsibility of monitors in terms of like responding to health and medical emergencies or needs. And I got thinking, our ushers are not really so much assigned as they are those who are available and identified Sunday morning step up into a row, to do the collection of the offering. But as to say that they're ushering per se, there's nobody positioned to catch a visitor. It's the greeters, I think, or it's the hall monitors who are the ones who are running into somebody who's coming late and helping to steer them to a seat. We don't have ushers that actually, it seems like, function along the lines of what this guideline is saying.
Right. When I read that too, usually, like Ken was saying, ushers are asked by Nathan if we can do the offering. But as far as having an assigned group of men to usher, take people to their seats, stuff like that, we really don't have that.
We recognize when we work through this that we really don't have ushers. We have greeters and we have offering pickers. Offering collectors.
Those are not like tax collectors, it's different.
Yeah. So obviously the guidelines for ushers have in mind that we would ush, but we don't do much ushering.
The only other comment that I throw along with the usher thing says that they must be CCBC members. No mention about male or female or
Young or old. Right. Well, yeah, because sometimes Nathan allows Robbie to help out, which is a great thing, I think. There's nothing that says that if Glenna wanted to be an usher and help pick up the offering, can she or can she not? What's that?
Not normally.
Okay, not normally.
That's not better practice.
Okay. But it doesn't spell that out.
No.
So we may want to go back and discuss that.
Make sure we exclude the women.
Yes, Nathan?
For ushers and greeters, there's references to the appearance policy, but unfortunately, I can't see that to see if that aligns with what we currently do.
I think it does.
The personal appearance policy governs everything. So music ministry, et cetera, has to come in line with the personal appearance policy. We approved that in early 2020.
Yeah.
So that's why, rather than having specific clothing requirements for ushers, we can merely make reference to the personal appearance policy, which covers that now.
So the tie issue and all that's still in there?
It is
Okay.
part of the personal appearance policy. I don't have it in front of me, but
We will include it in the final version of the Constitution and policy booklet, so it'll be available for reference.
Okay.
See, I always thought that you only asked people who had a tie on.
Well, that's what I've been instructed to do, which is one of the challenges with younger people is many people don't come with ties.
Right.
And so it's difficult to draw some of the younger people in to serve that way.
So next Sunday, John, we want you to be an usher, so wear a tie. Glenna?
Ushers must be CCBC members. And we have a list of members. I mean, somebody could be asked to usher who is not been baptized, which that in Jesse would not be a church member of Cedar Creek. Just because they're wearing a tie and they're appropriate dress is
And their appropriate gender. I would say that the person in charge, like at this point Nathan's in charge of the ushering, he pretty much would know who the members and non-members are. Would you not, Nathan?
I can make certain.
And then if he didn't,
Certainly make the list available. There is a list.
there is a list, yes.
Because there could be people who do not be, who are not really members. There are attenders that have been attenders for years.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Roger?
Goes to building use.
Mm-hmm.
Would we not accept the Red Cross's option to have a blood drive here? If they ask, is it possible to do that, or are we against that?
what's required for non-members to use the building?
Here's how it works. If Red Cross came and asked us if they could use our church building to have a blood drive, it would be the same as if, I'll give you an example, Janice's brother just passed away last month. He wasn't a member of our church. I went to the board and I asked the board to approve the use of the church building to have my brother-in-law's funeral at. They approved it. During the year, for instance, the Boy Scouts, is it the Boy Scouts? Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts asked to use the fellowship hall. They've asked to use the fellowship hall many times. And if there's nothing church-related going on, we approve it and they use it.
The answer to Roger's question is on page 46.
Yes, I got that.
And it has, the gist of it has not changed. That for non-members to use the facilities, which includes the property, the ball field, the parking lot, it requires pastoral staff and deacon board permission for non-members. The black print, that was the case before, and the red print, that's the case still.
Yeah.
So I can't you can't give
Right.
permission for non-members to use, but the group can.
Right. I have it here as a B under specific guidelines. The church is not available for weddings, funerals, or community activities other than those conducted by our pastoral staff
I don't think that applies to Roger's blood drive.
or by special permission of the deacon board.
I
But,
think Roger's blood drive is E on the following page.
okay,
That's how I would
yeah.
take that.
And in the years, I've only been on the deacon board for 10 years maybe. In the 10 years that I've been on it, I have never remembered one time when we have declined the use of our building to somebody who wanted to use it if it wasn't way out there, like we're gonna have a party or something, but we've never declined the use of our building for something like that, the Boy Scouts or anything like that. Yes?
I appreciate the discretion of the pastors and the deacon board. In this day and age, the Boy Scouts are becoming more and more lenient.
And we have discussed that.
You know, I'm just saying, you know, times are changing, and
When the last time they asked to use it, we discussed that very thing. I came up, 2 or 3 men, at least 2 or 3 men asked that same question. So we don't want to be totally exclusive, but Pastor.
The most recent example of an outside group asking to use our facilities is Teddy DeMott asking to use our ball field for T-ball practice one evening a week this spring, and we approved it.
Right,
That's the kind of thing we frequently get.
yeah.
I think we do understand that if we do open up our church property for community events that are literally not spiritual by their nature, we're gonna have unsafe people here that are not coming from the same place that we are. But I think we view it as a service to the community and a way to be a light in our community, to have connections we might not have.
Because over this COVID-19 period, if you have a loved one die, you only can have a few people at the funeral home. And we have opened our building up to allow funerals to be here. I mean, so we are open to all that. So, Greg, did you have a question?
Just to clarify, are we against all blood or just Roger's blood?
I'm not sure. Just a second, Gerald.
As far as the Boy Scouts, we probably wouldn't have done that if Darwin was a member of that. And he's a member of our church, and he requested that.
Yes, Darwin Stanton was involved in the Boy Scouts. Right.
And we haven't had Boy Scouts here in the last couple of years.
No. We didn't. With COVID-19, it kind of stopped all that, but one of the main pushes for Darwin. I mean, he was a church member, so yes, that was taken into account too. Ken, did you have your hand up?
Yes, same page 46, section E. The use of church property, each table, chairs, playground equipment, parking areas. I just don't want anybody to be in a trick bag as a monitor, security. We go out there and somebody will read this black and red, or white and red, rather, and say, you're not a member of our church, you shouldn't be on the playground, or you should not be sledding in the hill or parking in the parking lot. We're letting those things happen routinely right now. The way this reads to me, we're not supposed to be allowing that to happen.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was always under the impression, and I could be wrong, that if you wanted to sled at the church hill, you couldn't do it during church service time. That's the way I understood it earlier. I don't know if that's changed or not.
It's not explicit. We prefer that. At the same time, when community people come to sled in the winter, they don't ask permission. And we don't care, apparently.
So I'm just asking, why are we putting it in there if we're not enforcing that, or?
So when the Berry Rubai gravel road race uses our for an aid station, and they ask for permission. That's their use of our parking lot. That seems like it fits in this paragraph. But when the people who live right across the road in Willison's old house bring their children over to play on the merry-go-round, they don't ask permission. That doesn't seem to fit in the paragraph. I don't know, how would you got a good way, you got a suggestion for how we would make it explicit that we don't mind the neighbor kids coming and playing, but we don't want the use of the facility not to get out? What do you think, Ken?
I don't have a solution, but it's just that as I read this, it's like we're saying people that aren't members shouldn't be just parking in the parking area. And I see them coming and going all winter from the hill, and I see people at different times playing on the playground. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but written like it is, it sounds like it's prohibited activity.
When people use our sledding hill, we get good Google reviews.
What you're saying, though, it puts the monitors and the,
I want to make it real.
so the monitors know what they're supposed to do, if they're supposed to ask them to leave, is that?
Yeah, or somebody's wanting to be a real strict hall monitor. It's like, I understand there's room for some grace here, and I would certainly try to extend that to a bunch of kids or just somebody's being decent, but, you know, somebody else comes along and they say, hey, these are the rules, get out of here. Now, like,
Yes, one question.
Everybody is. Because you can't keep them being sued. And we carry insurance that covers injury to our people and injury to people who aren't our people. So when the neighbor comes and sleds and gets hurt, our insurance will cover that.
It doesn't matter if they have permission or don't have permission.
Right. Yeah.
If it's on your property, they kind of have you. It's like if you leave your car in my parking lot of my business and somebody steals it and I never even touched it, I'm still responsible for it because it was in my parking lot. So as crazy as it sounds. Bill.
For the playground equipment, I didn't follow the question, but just take it out of there. Do we need to have that? The playground equipment doesn't even need to be in that area. Why put it in there?
Did you get that?
I heard that. What else in that list, Bill? Is there anything else in that list that would be, that we treat that the same way? So, below the parking lot, parking area. Sometimes somebody has a disabled vehicle, they park it here and they come back and get it the next day. I don't care. I'd rather it wasn't sitting here all week, and if it looks like it's filled with explosives, we need to do something. That's, you know, the danger of,
You just don't know now.
so I can see that.
Or if we're gonna have it in there, we need to enforce it. Well, if we're gonna say you don't have permission to use it, then anytime the member sees a community person use it, technically, I'll either enforce it or get rid of it.
I think one way to look at it is that we have basically, in practice, given permission for people to use the playground, you know, just during the week when activities are not going on here at the church. And I think we feel good about that. So maybe the thing to do is for us to make a note about that either in here or in the hall monitor instructions that you have, so that it's very clear how that's supposed to be enforced. Because I could imagine some circumstances where we might want control. So for instance, if somebody says, we want to have a family reunion outside and set up a bunch of tables, you got the playground right there, you know, that might be different than using our sledding hill or just coming over one family.
Is there not a sign out there that says you cannot use the hill during the, oh, is that gone? Okay, go ahead, Bill.
We used to have a sign
Right.
that said, you know, you're welcome to use it except during church times or when we got it done.
Right.
So you'd come in and join us. But over the period of years, the sign's gone. The community so far has respected that. I don't really see any
Tyler, just a second, I'll get you, Scott, in just a second. Go ahead, Tyler.
In preparation of moving, I found some signs that I had printed up out here. We can put the signs that are brand new, I got them made, and just never put them on. So
These are signs that say you can't use the facilities while we're in church.
right, it explains like the old signs did, that during church service hours, I believe it lists those times. I'll bring them in. Look at it and see if that's.
Scott?
It sounds like we're having good discussion about this, the playground equipment. I'd hate to see us take it out of there, and then we're all here 3 years from now, or 4 years from now, wondering what we meant, and why we left it out. And so, my thought is to have it in there, but it sounds to me like our big concern is if organized activities. So if it's casual, unorganized activities and use of the neighborhood, of the community, it sounds to me like we don't really want to deter that. We're not trying to deter it.
I don't think Ken's question was to deter it either. His question, I think, is more of what are we supposed to do when people are using it during our time here. That, I think that is, am I right on that, Ken?
Right,
You don't know what to do with it. Hey, these people are playing on the merry-go-round. It's church time. Am I supposed to go out there and drag them to the car and throw them in their car?
To take Ken's point just a little bit further time-wise, the hall monitors are only concerned about that during 3 hours on Sunday. Whereas we're concerned about that for the other 165 hours of the week too. So whatever we do, we need to make sure it's useful on a Tuesday afternoon as well as a Sunday morning in terms of making provision. Scott's idea of unorganized casual use versus organized use may be useful for us here. Try and make provision for the neighbors who bring their children over to play in the fairground as compared to somebody who organizes.
Yeah. Glenna?
I was in favor of removing the playground equipment.
Then where are the kids gonna play? If you remove the playground equipment, where are the kids gonna play?
That page, I wanted to put, it would, the gist of the rest of the paragraph would not
wrote the
be,
list, but he turned it in, and she told it.
by use of that. Because that's the kids across the road aren't going to come over and ask for tables and chairs or other equipment or whatever. They just want to play on the merry-go-round.
Oh, it's parking area. Maybe the kids are learning to ride their bikes and they come over and ride on the parking lot. That's not a problem either.
During church time when you're preaching and you're looking out the window and there's a kid going around and around out there.
I don't need great church time. I need using it all.
Well, it could happen at church. Cindy?
When you say during church time, is school time also included in that?
Yeah, we have, say Delton's off school for the day, and a bunch of teenagers, you know what teenagers are, Ben. A bunch of teenagers are here sledding, riding their snowboards or something. And when our kids are gonna go out there for recess, I'll have to walk out there and ask those thugs to leave and come back later, because we obviously have an interest in our kids being able to use the facilities.
He said snowboards like he didn't know how to do that. So. Al Graves.
Yeah, I think we have an opportunity here with within our neighborhood, the use of the hill, especially in the winter, for sliding. This past winter, a number of times when I came over, I took out brochures and invited people to church and handed out those. And a number of weeks before we had the Olympian sliding party, I handed out a slew of those pamphlets. There was a record turnout at the Olympian sliding party, and there was a number of people from around the neighborhood who came to that. So
I don't think we're trying to say that people can't use the hill and they cannot use the playground. That's not what we're trying to. I think the question was more about what do the monitors do when people are out there doing those things during church time. Is that correct?
Yeah, how do we enforce it or not?
Yeah, do we enforce the policy the way it's written, or do we not enforce the policy the way it's written as a hall monitor?
Of course, we want to enforce the policy when we want to enforce it, and not enforce it when we don't want to enforce it.
I mean, maybe,
But it's really hard to write language that way, so we're gonna have to be careful. We're gonna have to try and be a little bit creative, craft language that makes provision for the things we want to allow and doesn't make provision for what we don't want to allow. Right now, the language is too inclusive.
yeah. Tyler?
Well, when we talk about hall monitors, what is their purpose?
To protect us.
That's right, and we're worried about shooters. We're not worried about kids playing on the playground. Hall monitors should not be concerned with that. They should be concerned with active shooting situations or people breaking into cars or something like that. They shouldn't be concerned about whether somebody's sliding down the hill or not. That's not, has nothing to do with why we put them in the first place. We began the whole program because we wanted to safeguard our children as they went from classroom to the restrooms or whatever that situation was, and that has grown into an active shooter program where we're trying to avoid that by locking the doors. We've locked all the doors so the snowboarders can't get in. And I think the hall monitors need to just monitor, not the hillside, not the grocery store, you know. If they sell booze before 12 o'clock, that's not our problem. You know. Okay.
I just think what the question basically is how do we enforce it as a monitor?
The monitors need clear instruction.
Right,
I mean, we can draft wording to provide that.
Yeah. That's, Glenn, did you have something, Roger?
I had the opportunity to meet a couple of them from across the street during service while I was a hall monitor. And I spoke with them, I invited them to come to church. I said, you know, we're having services here. I know you're not making a noise out there, you know, obstructing the service here, but we'd really like you to observe our right to worship. And you can come over here anytime and try not to do it during the service. They're very congenial, and they said, you know, they love the church here. And I said, we'd love to have you join us some Sunday. And they said, we'll look into it. I mean, that's, all they do is extend a hand of friendship.
Right. Just a second. Phyllis. Thanks, Tyler.
After listening to all this discussion, I think it would be wise to break up that paragraph into two paragraphs, because the playground equipment does not fit with, as Glenda mentioned. As a member, I will ask that when I use the tables for a garage sale, can I use some chairs if we're having a family reunion? Can I use them more because we just have a big area to go? I would ask for those things. I wouldn't ask, Lord, would you let me please play on the playground?
Well, you might, though. Let's say you're having a birthday party and you wanted to have it here. We have, you know, it's just like if you wanted to use the fellowship hall for a family reunion. We've been asked that many times and we've approved it. So let's say one of Cindy's girls were having a birthday party and there was 25 girls coming to it. And they wanted to have the playground equipment to play on and then be able to use the playground. They would have to ask permission to use that.
That's not fair, because another 25 are our family members.
And Cindy's a member. Cindy doesn't need to ask permission. Cindy's a member. She can use the playground with her 25 kids anytime she wants. Right?
Well,
So the paragraph that we're concerned about says these things are restricted to members use only. Cindy's a member. Cindy's friend, who's not a member, who wants to hold a birthday party here, she's got to ask permission.
yeah, but if I'm a member and I want to use the fellowship hall, I have to ask permission.
You do because we have multiple things get scheduled. That's a calendar issue.
Okay.
That's not a church use issue.
Okay.
Otherwise, you end up with multiple events in the same space. Oops.
That'd be Big gathering. Gerald, I saw your hand like 5 minutes ago.
I'm thinking, we can live by the letter of the law, or we can live by the spirit of the law. And if we're hard tacked, the letter kills. And we want to show grace and mercy to our friends and neighbors out here, and people that occasionally come into our area. And I know there's been a lot of discussion. We've got to take it back to the board and discuss what we've heard here tonight, and try and work through this and give our congregation decent answers.
I think the whole spirit of the question was, I'm a hall monitor. I look out the door. Do I or don't I? Do I go out there and make a scene? Or do I say, they're just, but that's, and every situation is different. I mean, you could have 2 or 3 little kids going down the hill, or you could have 25 snowboarders going crazy out there. I mean, what do we do? What do we don't do? And as a hall monitor, I personally would want to know, what am I supposed to do? That's me.
How about discretion?
Everybody's discretion is different. I might get up in a bad mood on Sunday and want to go out and drag them to their car. I don't know.
I think we're going to provide specific instructions.
So I think we need to work on that particular part. And maybe even see how it coincides with the security policy, too, also. Okay? Any other? Okay, last thing is the parking lot. As of right now, after the morning service, the parking lot fund is at $51,516. Our goal is $80,000. One of the reasons why the board, maybe shouldn't even touch on this, but one of the reasons why the board decided to go ahead and do this was because of the cost of maintaining what we have. I mean, we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on filling the cracks and repairing the asphalt. I think the last bill was like $15,000, wasn't it, Tyler?
That was the last quote.
The last quote that we had was to fill the cracks was going to be like $15,000. And we had paid that before to have it done. So we just thought it was time, and that's why we decided to maintain what we have and do it. John?
Is this the whole parking lot?
No, just the front end, just the north end,
No.
south end.
South end of the north lot. So
Yes.
the half of the top parking lot from the building, halfway up.
Yeah.
And did they have to take out the old asphalt and redo the base? Yes?
Yes.
Because the base is already,
Well, there's just a lot of cracking from heaving and everything else. It's just,
the gas.
right. And we have fixed those gaps. How many times have we fixed those gaps, Tyler? 2 or 3 times?
At least.
2 or 3 times that we have paid Willie's Asphalt to fix those and fill them, and every time we have to restripe it. So we just thought it was time to maintain what we had, to repair it. Any other questions? Okay, I need a motion to bring to the end the congregational meeting of the first quarter. Al Gray. Oh, Gerald, we need to pick up the ballots too, please. Do I have a motion to dismiss the congregational meeting? Mr. Brum. Second, Mike Stout. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
you all are getting the idea. We're adjusting here a little bit. Thank you for the discussion. It's healthy. Bill and Marilyn are going to come and sing, and then Pastor will come and share from the Word.
This is gonna work.
You know, there were a couple of you that suggested that I might be in trouble tonight with having communion and having a business meeting in the same service. And I said, no, we'll be fine. Those business meetings usually are over quickly. But you were in a talkative mood tonight. And as Don said, that's okay. That's a good thing. We encourage that. But if we go over time tonight, whose fault is it? It's not mine, right? The time on the clock is just a number, and we are certainly here to remember what our Savior has done for us. So we do want to spend just a few minutes thinking about that and preparing our hearts to take that seriously and to be impacted by our celebration of the Lord's Supper. And to accomplish that, I'll invite you to turn in your Bibles to Colossians chapter 2.
Colossians chapter 2. Just 2 verses that we'll be looking at tonight. And these are verses that remind us what Jesus accomplished on our behalf when he gave his life on the cross. Colossians chapter 2, and I'll read verses 13 and 14. This is Paul writing, and he says, "And you who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses, by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross." There are some important truths that we see in these 2 short verses. We see, first of all, our former condition, right? What was your former condition before you knew Christ? You were hopelessly dead in sin. That is where all of us were. We were hopelessly dead in sin. We were dead in our trespasses. We were living physically, but we were dead spiritually. Paul also says that we were dead in the uncircumcision of our flesh. And what he's talking about in context is our spiritual uncircumcision. You know, it was a problem to be uncircumcised in the Old Testament because that meant you were a Gentile. That meant you were outside the confines of God's chosen covenant people. But a much deeper problem than being uncircumcised physically is being uncircumcised spiritually. And that's true of all of us. That's true whether you are a Jew or a Gentile. And that is the condition that all of us were in. If you know Christ tonight, you realized that. At a certain point in your life, someone shared the gospel with you, you were reading a tract or you were reading your Bible, and you came to understand that you were a sinner and that you needed to experience God's grace. And so that is what we were before we knew Christ, but we are not there today, praise the Lord. We also see that we have been made alive together with Christ. The new life that you and I have, we don't have that apart from Christ. This is not something that we have earned. This is not something that we have achieved through our own effort. This is something that Jesus accomplished for us when he rose from the dead after paying the price for our sins. And because we have this new life, he has forgiven us all our trespasses. How many of them has he forgiven? All of them. There is not one trespass that you have committed that is not covered by the blood of Christ. But how has that been accomplished? How does God forgive unrighteous people? You know, it might be tempting for us to say, well, of course God forgives me for my sin, right? That's because he's God. That's what God does, right? He is there specifically just to forgive our sins and to make right what we have made wrong. Now, the Bible does teach us that God is merciful and that he is forgiving, but he cannot ignore sin, can he? The reason God is able to take away our sin is because he has paid the price. He has paid the cost of our salvation. We see that in verse 14. Our forgiveness has been accomplished by the cross. He canceled the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. You know, that record of debt that he's talking about, this is describing something like an IOU. This is a paper, this is a document that is signed and the promises payment says, this is what I'm going to do. You say, I never signed a document like that. But we as human beings are obligated to live in a way that pleases our Creator. Why did God create us? So that we could do what we want? So that we can revel in our human independence and autonomy? No, so that we could live for his glory. You and I, simply by virtue of our creation being in existence, we are for God's glory. That is our calling. That is God's expectation. And yet, we have not lived that way, have we? So the question is, what has God done with that IOU? What has God done with that requirement to live for his glory? When we know that we have failed, you and I, if we were to have a perfect track record from this day forward, would it be good enough? Not by a long shot. You and I have already failed to do what God has called us to do. The good news is God has taken care of that. That record of debt has been taken away. How has it been taken away? It's been nailed to his cross. Don't you love that imagery? Sort of reminds you of that hymn that we love to sing, right? It is well with my soul. You remember those words when we get to the third verse? My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. We are able to say that because of what Jesus did for us. Not because we have fulfilled our obligations, not because we did everything we were created to do, but because Jesus has taken on that debt that we owed and could never pay ourselves. Now, I don't know what you have in your experience that helps you understand this matter of God's cancellation of our debts. But it really helps if we have felt the weight of our sin debt before God. I think there's a reason why when John Bunyan writes Pilgrim's Progress, he describes this burden that Christian experiences before he comes to know the Lord at the foot of the cross. Maybe you have felt the ongoing weight of unmet financial obligations. Maybe you couldn't get a spending habit under control, so you racked up credit card debt, and before you knew it, you just had this huge weight hanging over you like a cloud. Or maybe you had a great business idea. You had the next thing that this world needed, and you were going to get rich off of it, only it happened that didn't work out the way that you planned, and now all of a sudden you find yourself with all of these obligations financially, and there is no way that you're going to be able to meet those obligations. Now, maybe you haven't experienced anything like that, but you can put yourself in the shoes of those who have experienced that. And how would you respond if you felt yourself under the weight of those financial obligations? Well, if you go back to the Great Depression, there were people who were walking off tall buildings because of the weight and the burden of those financial obligations that they felt as a result of that stock market crash. But that weight doesn't get lighter when you move into the area of our moral obligations and our moral debt. Imagine a situation where a man cheats on his wife. Then he comes to realize the seriousness of what he's done and the consequences of that, and he feels this incredible weight of guilt. What is his only hope in that situation? His only hope is mercy, and a high level of mercy at that. What about somebody who takes another person's life? You know, you can do time in prison, but does that do away with the inner guilt of having committed that kind of a sin? The only thing that can do away with that is forgiveness. Now, you find yourself saying, okay, I get it. Forgiveness is big in all of those kinds of situations, but I've never done those things. I've never cheated on my spouse. I've never murdered anyone. So does this have anything to do with me if I don't have that kind of a sin debt? You know, I remember reading Jesus' words in Luke 7 when I was a child. And what Jesus says in that passage is, he who has been forgiven much loves much, but he who has been forgiven little loves little. You know what I thought as a child who had already trusted in Christ as my Savior, and frankly hadn't had much opportunity to tarnish my record when it came to sin and when it came to criminal activity? You know what I thought? That's kind of a bummer. I'm never really going to be able to love Jesus the same way all of these other people that I've heard who have given amazing testimonies of personal transformation. They've done all of these terrible things, and now look at what they are able to do because of their experience of God's grace. They are able to love the Lord in a way that I'm never going to be able to relate to. But of course, that's not what it comes down to, is it? The question is not what you have done. The question is how you see what you have done. Because all of us have committed enough sin to condemn us to an eternity in hell. We are all that guilty before our God. And maybe it's time that you and I give some thought to that. If we have been Christians for many years, it's easy for us to forget what we once were and where we stood in relationship to the Lord. And you wouldn't even have to go back to the time before you were a Christian in order to understand that, would you? You can look back on the time that you've been following Christ and see all sorts of ways in which you have not measured up to his standard. What would happen if you tried to make a detailed list of all the sins that you have ever committed? What would that look like? Even the thought of doing that is overwhelming, isn't it? There are sins that you and I have committed that we are hesitant even to verbalize because we are so aware of just how serious those sins are. Can you imagine if your wife saw that list after you'd written it down? Or if your husband saw that list after you had written it down? Or your children, or your church family? It's overwhelming for us to think about. But the most complete, comprehensive list you could make pales in comparison to God's list. His list is far more extensive, far more complete, and far more serious than anything you and I, given our limited memories and our limited holiness, would be able to come up with. And yet, what has he done with that list? He's nailed it to the cross. That list no longer applies to you. It has been completely taken away. So what do you say in response to that? Praise the Lord. Amazing love. How can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? It's overwhelming that God would have, at the cost of his son, taken away that list that you and I don't even want to think about. You and I would never want somebody else to see. God has shown us that kind of forgiveness at the cost of his son. We know as Christians that we have failed to keep God's law, but Jesus has kept that law perfectly on our behalf. And all of the penalty that you and I have accumulated, all of the punishment that we deserve because of our sins, Jesus has taken all those punishments on himself. We are in bondage and debt to no one because Jesus has taken that debt away. And that gives us hope and joy and confidence. You can be filled with joy tonight because of what Christ has done for you. And because of what he's done for you, you should serve him freely and wholeheartedly every day for the rest of your life. We have been blessed with our debt being absolutely forgiven and taken away. What can we do in response? We offer ourselves to him as a living sacrifice. So may the Lord help us to do that, and may we be encouraged as we remember what Jesus did for us in removing our sin debt as we celebrate the Lord's Supper together tonight. Let's go ahead and do that together. Men, would you come?